release a report questioning its reliability, sending Marcus Caldwell into a rage as executives scrambled to contain the crisis while investors demanded answers, and the company's stock began sliding rapidly. And during that storm, Lena stood silently outside the conference room holding her flash drive, listening to powerful men argue about damage control while dismissing every suggestion except their own, until finally Marcus Caldwell slammed his fist on the table, shouting that he needed a solution, not excuses. And that was the moment Lena stepped forward hesitantly and spoke words that made the room fall silent. "I think I know where the problem is," she said softly. And for a moment, no one even realized who had spoken until Marcus Caldwell turned and saw the cleaning woman standing in the doorway, holding a flash drive, and confusion spread across the room, followed quickly by irritation, as one executive snapped that staff weren't allowed in meetings. But Lena held her ground and repeated calmly that the flaw was in the recursive trust verification loop, and that she had written a patch that could fix it. And the room erupted with skeptical laughter, while Marcus Caldwell stared at her in disbelief before asking sharply how a maid would even understand what those words meant. But Lena simply walked forward, placed the flash drive on the table, and said, "Run it." And something about her calm confidence made one engineer curious enough to open the file and project the code on the screen. And within seconds, the room grew quiet as the engineer's expression changed from amusement to shock, because the code didn't just describe the vulnerability perfectly, it demonstrated the exploit step by step, and then presented a clean solution that integrated seamlessly with their architecture. And one by one, the other engineers leaned forward, studying the screen, until the head of development whispered slowly, This actually works." And Marcus Caldwell's expression shifted from skepticism to stunned realization as he demanded verification tests immediately. And within minutes, their internal system confirmed Lena's discovery. The vulnerability existed exactly where she said, and her fix eliminated it entirely, something dozens of highly paid engineers had failed to achieve for weeks. And the room fell into stunned silence as everyone looked toward the quiet woman who moments earlier had been dismissed as invisible. And Marcus Caldwell felt something unfamiliar rising in his chest, a mixture of embarrassment, awe, and disbelief, as he realized the person who had just saved his company from disaster was the same woman he had mocked days earlier. And when he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than anyone had ever heard it, as he asked Lena how she learned to write code like that. And Lena simply replied that she used to study computer science before life took her in a different direction. And the truth settled over the room like gravity, because suddenly every assumption they had made about intelligence, status, and worth looked painfully small. And over the next hours, Lena explained the vulnerability in detail, while engineers rushed to implement her patch across the system, stopping the crisis just hours before the rival firm's report could destroy Caldwell's reputation. And by morning, the company announced a major security update that not only fixed the flaw, but introduced a stronger architecture inspired entirely by Lena's solution, turning what could have been a scandal into a breakthrough that strengthened their product. And the market responded instantly as confidence returned, and Caldwell Cyber Defense's stock rebounded stronger than before. But the real transformation happened inside Marcus Caldwell himself, as he sat across from Lena in his office later that day, realizing that the empire he had built on the belief that he could recognize talent had nearly collapsed, because he failed to see it standing right in front of him. Sin books. And for the first time in years, he felt truly humbled as he offered Lena a position leading a new research division inside the company, with full funding to develop security innovation she believed in. But Lena paused before accepting because the recognition meant less to her than the principle behind it. And she told Marcus Caldwell quietly that talent exists everywhere, even in places powerful people rarely look. And if his company truly believed in intelligence above everything else, then it needed to start seeing people differently. And Marcus Caldwell nodded slowly, knowing she was right. And in the months that followed, Lena Johnson became one of the most respected engineers in the industry, the former maid whose insights saved a billion-dollar empire and changed how that empire viewed the world. While Marcus Caldwell never again forgot the lesson learned the night the person he called just the maid exposed the code his billion-dollar empire had completely missed. Marcus Caldwell had built his empire from a single laptop and a rented garage in Palo Alto, turning a risky software startup into one of the most powerful cybersecurity companies in America, a company worth billions that protected banks, government agencies, and tech giants. And inside his glass-walled penthouse overlooking San Francisco Bay, he often reminded guests how he believed in talent and intelligence above everything else. Yet the irony was that the one mind capable of saving his empire worked quietly in the same building every night, pushing a cleaning cart down silent hallways, while executives in tailored suits passed by without a glance, because to them, she was simply Lena Johnson, the quiet black maid who arrived after midnight, cleaned desks, emptied trash, and disappeared before morning meetings began. And though Marcus Caldwell had never spoken more than 2 words to her, he once joked loudly during a late-night meeting that even the cleaning staff probably knows our system's better than we do, before glancing at Lena and adding with a smirk, well, maybe not her, which drew casual laughter from the room, while Lena simply lowered her eyes and continued wiping the glass conference table. The same table where hours earlier Caldwell's top engineers had argued about a mysterious flaw in the company's newest security algorithm, a flaw that threatened to destroy the reputation of the company because if hackers discovered it, billions of dollars in client data could be exposed. But despite weeks of analysis, no one had found the root cause, and investors were beginning to panic. Regulators were asking questions, and Marcus Caldwell's temper had grown legendary throughout the building as he demanded solutions from teams that could not deliver them, while Lena Johnson listened quietly each night, as fragments of these conversations drifted through open office doors while she worked. Because Lena had learned long ago that people spoke freely around those they believed invisible, and invisibility had followed her most of her life, even though her mind had always burned brighter than anyone realized. Because 15 years earlier, Lena Johnson had been a prodigy studying computer science at MIT, the daughter of a Detroit bus driver who believed education was the only path out of struggle, and Lena had thrived there until life shattered unexpectedly when her mother fell ill, forcing Lena to leave school to care for her younger siblings, pushing aside dreams of algorithms and cybersecurity to work whatever job she could find. And years passed until those dreams became quiet memories buried beneath bills and responsibilities. Until one night, cleaning an office building, she overheard a conversation about encryption protocols that reignited something deep within her mind. And from that night forward, Lena began studying again, alone at night, using old textbooks, free online lectures, and scraps of printed code she found in office recycling bins, teaching herself more advanced systems than many engineers with formal degrees. But she never told anyone, because she knew how the world judged people by titles and appearances. And so for years she remained invisible, while quietly sharpening a mind that had never stopped learning, until she eventually found herself working nights inside Caldwell's cyber defense headquarters, one of the most powerful cybersecurity companies on Earth, where she began noticing fragments of the very problem Marcus Caldwell's engineers were struggling to solve, because as she wiped monitors and vacuumed floors, she glimpsed lines of code left open on screens and scribbled diagrams left on whiteboards. And though most people would have ignored them, Lena recognized patterns immediately. Subtle inconsistencies in the company's encryption verification loop, something small but dangerous, buried deep inside millions of lines of code. Something their engineers had overlooked because they were searching in the wrong place entirely. But Lena said nothing because who would believe her? A janitor with no credentials, no title, and no seat at the table where billion-dollar decisions were made. And so she returned each night quietly studying fragments of the system until the pattern became undeniable. The flaw wasn't simply a bug, it was a mathematical oversight in the algorithm's trust validation layer, a tiny recursive vulnerability that could allow a skilled attacker to bypass authentication. If they chained requests in a precise sequence, something so subtle it could easily escape detection for years, but once discovered, could collapse the entire security framework Caldwell had built his reputation on. And Lena knew that if criminals found it first, the consequences would be catastrophic. Yet still she hesitated, because every memory of being dismissed, underestimated, and ignored echoed in her mind. Especially the night Marcus Caldwell laughed and called her just the maid. And so she continued cleaning silently while debating whether to step forward, until one evening, everything changed when she overheard a conversation that chilled her blood as 2 senior engineers revealed they planned to push the software update live within 48 hours despite the unresolved flaw, hoping to fix it later through patches. And Lena knew that decision could expose millions of users instantly. And in that moment, She realized silence was no longer an option. So, after finishing her shift, she sat down at an unused workstation and began writing code from memory, reconstructing the company's algorithm as best she could, and proving mathematically how the vulnerability could be exploited. And then she wrote a fix, a solution elegant and simple that rerouted the recursive trust call through a new verification layer that eliminated the exploit entirely, a patch no one else had discovered, and she saved everything on a flash drive before leaving quietly at dawn, unsure whether anyone would ever listen. But the next night, chaos erupted inside Caldwell headquarters as news broke that a rival cybersecurity firm had detected suspicious behavior in Caldwell's system and was preparing to